Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 86th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 alphabetic Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Monday evening? It's very slushy outside, right here in Toronto, of course. Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. That's the one thing I don't miss about the North in general is right after the, unending winter over the months. And then you got that nice black snow, that gray slush going on, and then it melts and it's just like ultra gross. And it's like, I'm good. No. It's in here in SF, it's either just rain, wet, or dry. And then it's actually pretty clean compared to all the slush going on over there in
it must be nice. It must be nice. Again, it's just water everywhere. And Sean says in capital letter, nobody asked. But Sean, as you may well know, the weather report cannot just be contained in the Xbox drive. It is now spread to this show. So every show, of course, starts off with the weather report, Garret, of course.
Let me tell you, Ryan and Sean, about this weather in SF. It's actually pretty rare to see this much rain. It's been a lot of rain. Much needed rain, but to the point of like a flooding advisory like every other day around the area. It's kind of crazy, actually. It's like climate change is happening or something like that.
Well, you guys had like the crazy, well, I know not you. We talked about it last week, but like California had like the crazy snowstorms and stuff like that. Like it's kind of a big deal. Also, I know the audio is all over the place, but hopefully it's fixed by now. Again, let us know in the chat, folks, because we're
yes, please. Thank you.
Of course, audio listeners won't even hear this part, because future Ryan will have edited this part out, provided that I actually remember to actually cut this play. I mean, this will be a fun game for the audio listeners, because of course they can let me know if I remember to do that. But anyways, this is the RPG Cave where we talk about RPGs all the time, except for when we talk about the weather. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. So if you're watching the live stream right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and then ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live or when we put up new videos. Also, we are on the road to 1,500 subscribers, so we hope everyone gets on the train. We're getting there. We're at 1,373 right now, Garret. So I feel like
that's pretty good.
In the next month or two, if we really make a push, we might be able to get to 1,500. We'll see. If I bring it up enough on the show, maybe it'll will it into existence, which is kind of in line with our theme for tonight's show, which is about willing things into existence. But also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe to us there if you haven't subscribed already. And don't forget to rate us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps the show get discovered. And again, we've been seeing pretty big uptick on subscribers for the audio side. So huge thank you to everyone who's been hopping in on the show. And also even rating us on Spotify. Because again, that helps actually people jump on in and find us on the audio feeds. And last but not least, if you want to hear this show a little bit early on the audio side, or if you want one big podcast feed with all the Carpool Gaming podcasts or some exclusive content, head out over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Carpool Gaming. Throw a little tip in the little tip jar and out comes content. Without further ado, Garret, before we read from the sacred texts, we have a little thing we need to do because it's been almost a month since we actually set this up. And since we might not have time to do it with next week's show because we may have a special show planned next week. We'll get into that a little bit later. I figured this would be a good time, Garret, to dust off the tomes.
Yes.
Dusting off the tomes there. It is time for Garret's Backlog adventure. It is time for an update. Of course, folks who missed this last month, Garret has kindly asked me to recommend games for him to play from his backlog or games that he's ever played before. And I suggested that Garret play Shining Force on the original Genesis because I knew you'd started it, you'd played through it a little bit, and then other games came out and you kind of put it down, and I know you were enjoying it. So I want to hear from you, Garret. I know you've returned to Shining Force. You haven't posted pictures on Twitter, so I know you've been playing it. What has your return to Shining Force been like? Have you been playing it at all since then?
Well, okay. So, I thought I had, one more week to not complete the game or whatever, but kind of finish up some homework here and there. But I've been playing intermittently with other games around it. But let me just tell you first off, on the Switch OLED, I think that's the best place to play. Like, other than like playing it in your real systems or whatever, um, it's a really good place to play your old games because the colors just pop
Mhm.
really nicely. Like you won't see this any better on a CRT TV or whatever. It looks so good handheld wise. That and also you can rewind, which is a great feature in this game.
Yeah, especially because
I
some of
gotta
the
have a
battles can be
music.
pretty difficult. So I can imagine.
Yeah, they're pretty rough actually. My I've gone through at least like 4 battles, I
Okay.
think, in this game. So just mixed here and there. I did after the second battle pick up a guide just because I know I was missing stuff. I just didn't know where.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? This seems like a, old enough game where I can just go to a guide and just kind of um just maximize the amount of items I can get, the characters I can, because the characters, it's so random. You just talk to people and they just join you, and I'm like,
Yep.
cool, sounds good.
Especially because a lot of that's
And
optional too. Like there's a lot of
it is.
characters you can miss if you don't know who
It's
to pick
so
them up.
many.
And likewise too, there are special items that you have to pick up for characters to be promoted a certain way to get like
Oh
unlock the
wow.
best classes in the game. So yeah, actually, like that's a game that is totally fine to follow a guide for as long as you like try and avoid the story spoilers. But Shining Force, the story's fine, but that's not the main reason why you're playing that game. Like the combat
Right.
is really good, and it's kind of the big selling point.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Playing this game, it is actually one of the more straightforward turn-based tactical RPGs I've played. It's very instant. It's just like, okay, boom, your character, boom, the next character, and then so on and so forth. It's an older game, so I understand some of its, like, is some of the features that's kind of been ironed out over the, past decade or so, like speed turn. It's so random
Yeah.
in this game. It's just like, oh, it could be your enemy, it could be your friend the next turn.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
all based off the
what?
character speed stats, and even then, it's
Yeah.
totally random. But I mean, when you consider the state of strategy role playing games in 1991 when this came out, like
Oh, that's
you
unbelievable.
had
Yeah.
this in Fire Emblem, like the original Fire Emblem on the NES. That was it.
Yeah.
Like
And
those were your two
yeah.
options.
And let me tell you, this is far more accessible now compared to that Fire Emblem game.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know how you could play that Fire Emblem game and and relatively beat it without any kind of guide or whatever. In this one, you can at least go into a battle. It's like, okay, some of your characters can die. It's okay. You can revive them. You'll have gold to revive them. It's
yeah,
okay. So I like how forgiving it is. Yeah, the story's fine. It's just like
yeah.
it's a 1991 video game for sure.
Yeah, I definitely
You can
mentioned
feel
that
it.
ahead of time, even going into it. It's like, don't expect the story to be very good because it's not. Because again, it's just very time and place. Like just a very cliche kind
Yeah.
of story. I definitely think the story is better in the second game.
Oh
But
yeah.
I still think it's
Okay.
also not the highlight in that game too. Because I think, like, if you like the combat in this one, I think you'll really like Shining Force 2 because that they go like way more in depth with a lot of the mechanics, with a lot of the enemy types and stuff. Like it's a really solid
Cool.
strategic game as well on top of this. But
Yeah. I really had to play defensive and like figure out it's more figuring out the formations, of your army, like how do you place them correctly? Very similar to Fire Emblem for sure. So yeah, I want to continue playing it. I just been really distracted with other games too, as you
yeah,
can tell. I've been really digging Live Alive. I'm almost done with the last chapter out of the 7 or whatever it is. Um, so I know there's more to it after it, but I'm pretty much almost there, and then I'll probably be in the Shining Force from then on afterwards. So yeah,
yeah.
I'll keep you posted, Ryan, for sure. I want to continue playing it. How about that? Garrett's retro backlog adventure continues with Shining Force. I think yeah no. After Alive, that'll be my next Switch game for sure, just to
Yeah.
get into and dive into.
And it's one of
Um,
those things too where we talked about it when we put this idea together as well. Like, there's a chance after a month of me recommending a game to you, there's always a chance you might put the game down, and that's totally fine. So I'm actually glad that I picked the first game that I picked for you is one you actually want to stick with, and I know that you're going to want to play, because like I felt like when we first talked about when you first picked up Shining Force, like you randomly started playing it one day, like I knew this was a type of game that I think you'd really like. So I'm glad that you're sticking with it and gonna see more of the game afterwards. Although obviously there are lots of games coming out, after like
goodness.
in the next couple months. So, it might get a little bit busy. So I totally will not, hold it against you if you do have to put it down for other games. Like the game that I've been, sinking all my time into, which of course is Octopath Traveler 2. Cause I'm like,
I want to play it.
I checked my hours on PlayStation 5 last night. I'm 47 hours into Octopath Traveler 2, and I'm like halfway through the game. So eventually I'll finish it. But I also got a bit distracted because the Resident Evil 4 demo came out this week, and which I streamed on the channel. And I'm actually going back and replaying it because there's actually a bunch of stuff I missed. Like the insanely hard mode, and there's different weapon drops and stuff in the village that you can go check out, which is really interesting. But that even been replaying Resident Evil 2 and 3 again, because I'm just in the mood for Resident Evil right now. So I'm kind of like mainlining those games. So those are kind of the games I'm playing at the moment. But Octopath Traveler 2 is definitely for me the RPG at the moment, because that game's really gosh darn good, and it's too bad. It's too bad I'm not on a show that actually discusses these types of where this game exists, because it's on PlayStation and Switch, but not on Xbox. So we can talk about it.
It's so weird, man, isn't it? The second game, after the first one came out on Game Pass, it leaves Game Pass. The first one, right before 2 comes out. It's just, I don't know. Square Enix is just really buddy-buddy with Sony now. I think there's definitely been a tone shift in the past, very recently, like past year. Like, let's get these games not on Game Pass anymore, and let's just be a exclusive / Switch exclusive kind of system going on. And whatever works for them in their NFT games. So cool.
And I know, and I'm kind of also holding back talk about Octopath as well, because Seth and I are actually going to be doing a discussion about Octopath in the near future, where we're figuring that out on the back end. It's when we're going to actually do that, because it's a long game. I don't even know when I'm going to be able to finish this gosh darn game. And I think both of us want to finish the game first before we talk about it. So
sounds good.
We'll talk about it in the future. But enough about all that, Garrett. We're 16 minutes in the show. We haven't even said the line yet. It is time to read from the sacred texts, because we got to talk about tonight's topic, which is the rumor mill. Now, fun fact about carpool gaming. On most of our shows, we actually don't talk about rumors at all. And in fact, we also don't make this a weekly thing. But we thought it'd be fun to kind of, talk about RPG rumors. But also we're going to talk about, just some news stories as well. And then we have a fun topic that Nagachaka actually pitched to us that we're actually going to get to in a little bit here. So obviously, there's not, unlike a lot of other genres, RPGs don't get a ton of rumors. And especially right now, there aren't a ton of rumors in the RPG one. But of course, the biggest rumor when it comes to RPGs is the NVIDIA leak. And we know we learned so much, so many RPGs that are coming out, Kingdom Hearts 4, Dealful Chronicle, like a lot of games that weren't actually announced from especially Square Enix or Capcom came from the NVIDIA leak. And there's still some that haven't been announced yet, including one that actually just popped back up today with brand new information about that game. So we'll get to that one in just a second. But first off, we got to talk about Final Fantasy IX Remake. Apparently, Final Fantasy VII Remake was not enough, but we need Final Fantasy IX to be remade. I don't even know how they would even tackle this one, Garrett, because Final Fantasy IX is a very different feeling game from Final Fantasy VII, to the point where the characters play very differently, like especially because it's more of a traditional Final Fantasy game versus 7, where 7, like, even though it still plays like a Final Fantasy game, the original one does, all the characters feel like they're not really based around specific character classes, and they all use like modern weaponry, so it makes more sense for an action RPG. But like, I'm trying to imagine how you'd play as Vivi or Princess Garnet, who are some of like the white mage or the traditional black mage character in like an action RPG like Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm like, I don't even know how you would even do that in a game like that.
Hmm.
So, Garrett, if you were to remake a classic turn-based RPG like Final Fantasy IX, how would you tackle it? What do you think Square Enix
Yeah,
is doing over there with this one? Is
I
it
don't know.
going to be the NFT game that's going to save us all?
Oh goodness, please don't. Yeah, so Final Fantasy 9, funny enough, I did play like 5 hours of that game. So I understand the feeling of Final Fantasy 9, more or less. You're right. It is more of a, back to classic style Final Fantasy game. It's super cool, super cartoonish, chibi like, type of characters. I honestly remake, sometimes it's a gray line. Like you don't really know what that's gonna be. Even though it says remake, it's like, well, Square Enix's definition of remaster is like, okay, let's update the HD ports, let's update the mechanics, let's add some functionality in here. That's the remaster. The remake is like, okay, Final Fantasy VII remake. We're totally reimagining what's going on with Final Fantasy VII. It's going to be built from the ground up. It's going to be groundbreaking. It's not going to be totally, one on one with the story, whatever. So that's very two different paths. And I think Final Fantasy IX Remake's kind of in the middle. I think what they can do is really update the graphics and
Mhm.
update kind of the presentation of Final Fantasy IX, more or less, but keep the battle system and keep the class and job system or whatever and keep it more one to one. I
Mhm.
think that's what they're thinking more for Final Fantasy IX than anything is like, hey, let's call it a remake, but just let the audience understand that this is more of like it's kind of a bare minimum of a remake, not the Final Fantasy VII reimagined remake that's in Final Fantasy VII itself.
Okay.
So I don't know. What do you think about that? A little bit of
So
a hybrid, I guess.
my only thought process against your proposition, because first of all, what you described as someone who really likes Final Fantasy IX is exactly what I would want to see from a Final Fantasy IX remake, where
Hmm.
it doesn't, they don't need to overhaul the battle system, or at least if you overhaul it,
Yeah.
still keep it turn based, but then make tweaks to it instead of making it something completely different, like in a different style of game. Because, but when Square Enix uses these monikers, and we'll get to the other one in just a second, they will usually use a remake in the moniker when they do more to it, like do like the Final Fantasy VII kind of treatment to it,
Yeah.
versus they'll usually put remastered in the title if it's exactly what you talked about, where they update the graphics but then keep
Yeah.
everything else kind of exactly the same. So that's why, like, I think there's more to it than just that, which again just like it makes me wonder how they would even tackle that idea of doing
Yeah.
something like having that gameplay differently, without ruining it in a lot of ways, or ruining what made it special in the first place. So,
Hmm.
I am
Hmm.
excited that this is something that might happen as someone who again likes Final Fantasy IX a lot, but I also think too. There is diminishing returns to this because the PlayStation 1 version is still great to go back to. It's not like it's an ugly game. It's not like it's Final
No, it's
Fantasy
not.
7 where you've got like the characters made out of
Polygons,
blob shapes, and you've got like the
triangles.
stat yeah, you've got the static backgrounds and stuff like that. Like Final Fantasy 9 really doesn't have a lot of that stuff, and it really pushed the PlayStation 1 to the limits
It
as far
did.
as
Mhm.
visual design and gameplay. So yeah, that's why I'm like cautiously optimistic as to see what they do with that, but we'll see. That again, it's not announced yet, so we'll withhold judgment, of course, until we see it. But
Mhm.
I am curious to see how that will turn out, because this next one, Garrett, seems like more of what you described.
Yes.
Because Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered was also on the Nvidia League as
Mm.
well. And I imagine that that's more of the traditional. Hey, this is the same as the PlayStation One version as far as the way it plays, and we're just updating the visual look of it for the most part.
Yeah, no, no, totally. And, they're just kind of following their cadence with those remasters with Tactics Ogre remastered, another leaked Nvidia game. Um, yeah, it's just par for the course to have Final Fantasy Tactics in there. sell it for $40, very minimum effort, but a lot more return with that. So yeah, definitely makes sense. I just, man, Final Fantasy 9 remake. I hope they know it's like they really got to do something special
Yeah.
for it in order to be successful. Because it really can't be a reimagination. That'll take too much effort for that kind of game. Just, I think they can even try to outsource it, like to a studio that they trust.
Mhm.
That follows that classic RPG charm, but also has modern mechanics in there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
They could
Anyways,
try that, but that's what they tried with Final Fantasy VII Remake it with CyberConnect, the studio
oh,
that does the Naruto games, and that kind of
I know.
backfired a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of backfired for sure.
Yeah,
So,
but
anyways,
next up, I want to talk about a game that appeared on the list, Garrett, that I know you really like a lot, and that's Shin Megami Tensei 5, because it's on
oh
Switch.
yeah,
It's been a Switch exclusive for a while. We were wondering if it would ever come to other platforms, and of course the Nvidia leak indicates that it is coming to other platforms. PC is what it listed, but we literally got a rumor today from comicbook.com who's talking about the idea that, because they're doing like Atlas is doing this big Shin Megami Tensei 30th anniversary event on May 5th in Japan. And one of they're getting word that one of the things that's happening is this PC version is being announced, but it's also coming to Xbox and Xbox Game Pass on the same day. So
that would be cool.
on PC,
That
so
would be really cool.
imagine this game, Garrett, with all the frames on PC in Game Pass. Like, come on, it's gonna be great.
Man, that's Shin Megami Tensei 5, the series in general is a very obtuse series, so I'm wondering how it's gonna be, but maybe they're just really looking at the numbers with Persona. It's like, we'll just port these guys over and just like we'll just have some copies and like they'll have a return on it. I think they were so surprised by Persona 4 Golden being sold so well
Mhm.
on Steam. They're like, oh, there's actually an audience on PC. Like they got word of it, and then now Persona 3 and 5 are now out on PC and Xbox, and so it doesn't surprise me that Shin Megami Tensei 5, the most accessible Shin Megami Tensei game, they just want to, milk it out, give it to as much platforms as they can. So
Yeah.
definitely makes sense.
It also sounds
Good
too like
out there.
Microsoft basically was like, here's the bag of money. Please enjoy this. And
Yeah.
they're like, we like the bags of money from Microsoft. It's like Sega, again, has put a lot of their stuff on Game Pass or brought a lot of their games
Yeah.
that, don't exist on other platforms or weren't on Xbox before to Xbox. So this just seems like another in the long line of that. And also in the video leak, we also saw that Catherine Full Body was listed under the same heading as well. So I imagine, and this is something I've talked about on Xbox Drive forever. I'm like, why isn't that game on Xbox? Because the original version was on Xbox.
Original is on.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me. It breaks my brain. So it's just like, yeah, I think that Microsoft basically is like, yeah, here's some money. And they're like, cool. Well, we're already putting it on PC. Why don't we put it on Xbox too? I guess.
Man, that would be very cool to have Catherine Full Body on Xbox Game Pass as well. I mean, Sega is very buddy buddy with Xbox when it comes to Game Pass. It's like, you want it on Game Pass? You're giving me money? Great. Like we'll make a profit on it even with nothing, Just like we'll just make the port and here you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's gonna be very nice on 60 frames.
Yeah.
It'll be very quick loading too, so probably very accessible on Xbox.
Yeah, because I mean, for the
Can't
most
wait.
part, it didn't run poorly on Switch or anything like that. But I just feel
It
like
did not, no.
I also feel like you could get probably so much more out of that game running it on PC. Even just a solid frame rate and fast loading times even will just help immensely with how many battles you have to go through in that game. For as an example, like I think it'll actually help a little bit. But moving on, of course, we got a new Monster Hunter game listed there as well. Monster Hunter 6, not Monster Hunter Rise, just Monster Hunter 6. It's probably just more Monster Hunter. We're not Monster Hunter people, so I don't think either of us have much to say
It's
about that.
interesting. I wonder what that is though. Will they say Monster Hunter 6?
I mean,
Or
they
will
could.
they say they could, but they kind of like just put out the number. I think it could be Monster Hunter World too.
Yeah.
Just leading that brand over, and then like being a more game console and PC centric game. Um, I can totally and you know, Monster Hunter World was so popular when I remember that game came out. A lot of non-Monster Hunter people got into it like for a month at least. And they do such a good job of putting ongoing content on there and repeatedly putting on stuff. Like you can tell Monster like they're squeezing out as much as they can with Rise, and I wouldn't be surprised with the I think the Capcom Spotlight thing is about to
No, it just happened last
it
week.
just happened. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind then.
I'm actually curious to know what the numbers are like then for Rise and Sunbreak on PlayStation and Xbox, because I think World 2, if it is World 2, would probably be on those platforms. So I'm curious to know how Rise is actually performing on PlayStation and Xbox since it just came out, and then Sunbreak is coming out next month. So
Mhm.
I'm curious.
Yeah, seeing the just hearing some of the numbers from PlayStation about Monster Hunter Rise, it was like not that huge, I guess, because they didn't really push the marketing with like, console wise or even PC wise. I'm sure they got a lot more copies going for PC for Monster
Mhm.
Hunter Rise. And I wonder how Sunbreak is doing, but of course, I think the port is just for the port and just like let's have it out there. It's pretty easy for us. We've milked it out as much as we can on Switch. We got the message out. Great being on Game Pass too. Another great game to be there. People should check out Rise if you haven't. I think it's still. I mean, it's the most accessible Monster Hunter game. I think it's pretty easy to control. It has best of both worlds, best of the classic Monster Hunter and Monster Hunter World. So,
Yeah, and it's
and you
on
have to
Game
hug it.
Pass, so there
And
is
it's on
that
Game
as well.
Pass.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, and then the last one from the Nvidia leak, because again, all the other RPGs that were there are all games that have come out or have been confirmed at this point. This is the only one that's left, and that is Titan Quest 2. Now, Garrett, I don't know if you are familiar with the Titan Quest series. I mentioned it a little bit on last week's episode because Titan Quest is a very old RPG. It came out, I
Mm.
think, in like the early 2010s or late 2009.
2006.
2006. I knew it was a long time ago because I had it on CD on PC when I was playing a lot of PC games. So it's like a Diablo-like game, like Diablo, but it's in
Mm.
Greek mythology. And
Oh, cool.
basically it was sold to THQ Nordic as part of the THQ sale. And they've been putting out a bunch of updates and expansion packs for the original game, the one that launched in 2006, because people have been playing this game, Garrett, the entire time, which is kind of crazy to think about. Because essentially, before they had bought the IP, there
Mhm.
was one expansion pack called Immortal Throne, which came out a year after the game came out. But then there were no other updates to the game basically until 2017, 2018. I think around then is when they started updating the game again because people were still playing it. And there's multiple expansions since then, and now they're finally getting a new game in Titan Quest. So again, Titan Quest was actually like a really fun Diablo-like game. I actually think it's a lot better than people give it credit for. Although I know I can't see in the chat mentions the Titan Quest didn't really get his hooks into them. But I know that I personally really liked it, and I know a lot of people out there like those games. So I'm
Cool.
curious to know what they do with the sequel, and if it comes to consoles and everything else, because I think that could be a pretty promising action RPG if
Mm.
they do it right. And I love the idea too of doing a game like Diablo but in a different setting. And I think Greek mythology is actually a pretty good
Yeah.
setting for a game like that. But
Hmm. I think this type of genre is well underplayed. I think there's a lot of different settings you could do that can make this dungeon crawling Diablo-like style games really cool. And of course, yeah, it was a Greek mythology. I'm
yeah,
super down for this. And it's interesting. I was looking into a little bit more of the history of this Titan Quest game, and it's a released on last gen consoles and Switch in 2018.
yeah.
So yeah, THQ Nordic's like, let's pick it up from the ashes. I wonder who's the developer for Titan Quest 2. Or if it's still Iron Lore Entertainment, like if they're still around.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know,
might be
but
it might be them again. Who knows? But
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's funny because again, that's around when they started updating it on PC was when they brought out the console version as well. But I haven't played the console version, so I don't know how that one plays because I remember just sinking a ton of time into this on PC when it first came out. I think I put like 100 hours into this game. So
yeah, the company got defunct in 2008, so it must be in-house somewhere. Of course, THQ Nordic has, so many different things. Embracer Group has
yeah,
so many different groups. I'm sure it'll be home to one of those groups. I'm morbidly curious now because Embracer Group, I don't know. They just have so many things. They have
are you
so many
trying to make
irons in the
fun of the
fire.
fact that they have 53 AAA games in development right now, Garrett? And I'm not exaggerating. That's what they told us the last time they made an update about that.
That's insane. They it's not practical, man, at that point. Like, I don't know, I don't know what's their business model. I think it's gonna be kind of it's more enthusiastic than anything. It's unrealistic. We'll see how long they'll
Yeah.
go. Hopefully this, something good will come out of it, like this Titan Quest game. I'll be down to
Yeah.
checking it out. So,
And worst case scenario, we have the new Tomb Raider game from them to look forward to if, this falls through or whatever. I know it's not an RPG,
Oh, true.
but they got that. So, at least,
Yes, I remember they have. Wait, so, man, do they have Crystal Dynamics too?
yeah, they
Is
own
that
Crystal
part of it?
Dynamics.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, I remember now.
But
Yeah,
yeah, because they bought all the Square Enix North American studios because they have them. They have the Deus
Embracer
Ex
Group is
people.
such a headache.
They got so much stuff. So, yeah, THQ Nordic is a company that exists and they have games that are coming. Put that on the back of a box, folks. All right.
Like SpongeBob SquarePants, the Cosmic Shake.
Yes, exactly. Because they got games like that and games like Saints Row. They're just all over the
Saints
place
Row,
with games.
which was something.
Look, it's a
Certainly
game, okay?
something last year.
It's a game. But anyways, that does it for the Nvidia leak. But Garrett, something you
Yes.
wanted to bring up was a little thing mentioned in an interview. So tell me about this Fallout New Vegas remastered business.
Yeah, so the gamer had an interview with the creators of Fallout New Vegas, and I think they're still at Obsidian. Hold on, let me just pull up the interview real quick. I don't want to misspoke any kind of names here. I think it's like Kane or whatever. Man, where is it? I am so sorry I didn't look for the gamer. Yeah, so the title is Fallout New Vegas Remastered would be awesome, says Obsidian, by Rhiannon Bevan at The Gamer. It's the original article, has the interview and everything. And Tim Kamen, Leonard Boyarsky agree that Fallout New Vegas Remastered would be awesome. And so, it's a longer interview asking them questions or whatever about the Fallout series and what they're doing with, it was with the Outer Worlds, the new edition coming out, which is not so great, I hear. They were just talking a little bit more about public speak with that, but then they went to Fallout New Vegas, like, hey, wouldn't it be great to have a Fallout New Vegas remastered? It's like, yeah, that would be cool. Like that kind of passing.
Yeah.
And it's like you don't do that in a conversation if you're not allowed to. Like, there's something going on there. There's a little hint, there's a little pebble of hope that Fallout New Vegas, and I think Fallout 3, I think both of those have a very good chance of being remastered in some way, whether it be from Obsidian and BGS, which I doubt it because they got their hands full. I think it could be easily outsourced to other studios,
Right.
to do this. So, yeah, I would be very, very excited if Fallout New Vegas was remastered. So that's the rumor mill.
Yeah.
Going around.
Or at the very least, bringing it to other platforms. Because don't get me wrong, on Xbox, I think what we have for, Fallout New Vegas and then Fallout 3 are kind of like remasters for the game as far as what we got on platforms because they received a bunch of updates, both of them. Especially Fallout 3 actually received a bunch of updates. So, in fact, I think both of them are 4K 60 games on Xbox Series, on One X or Series X.
One X update, yeah.
Yeah, so I think like getting at least bare minimum that level of those games on other platforms like Switch or PlayStation 5. Like I think that would be kind of an awesome move. I don't know. Yeah, like this still isn't telling us that that's something that exists, but they're like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we did this thing? I think that'd be pretty great. Ed Boon does that all the time. Funnily enough, with Mortal Kombat, and of course now we know that Mortal Kombat 12 kind of leaked out through the shareholders phone call, so we know it's actually a thing. So that kind of comes from that place as well. Where even though it's one of those things where you can take that as kind of an off statement, but it's just like, yeah, they don't say stuff like that if they know that they can't, or they're not teasing at least something. So
I just think it's really straightforward to do, and it's something that can be done now, and it'd be a gap just to fill over. I know they want to push out Fallout 76 to the max, but like, other than that, we don't have it is a Fallout desert out there, man. It is the Mojave Desert. We ain't getting anything. And it would be just so cool to see these games come back in a much have that Skyrim refresh, have that Skyrim special edition treatment going on instead of just updating the texture packs.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't done that with more other games. Whether and it's not just Fallout 3 or New Vegas, but like, I'm wondering like if we'll ever see something like that with Oblivion, or cool. Morrowind, or some of these other classic Bethesda titles maybe getting the remastered treatment in a lot of ways. Because again, they probably don't think it, or at least like you normally wouldn't think of it that way, like that they would need it, because on Xbox you kind of have those already with that compat. But I'm more talking about other platforms, because they really could sell these games to other platforms as well and not keep them exclusive anyways. But even then, there's a lot they could really do with like an anniversary edition of Oblivion, or an anniversary edition of, Fallout 3 or something like that, that goes outside of what they've got there on the backwards compatible versions. So I think you're onto something, Garrett. I think they're onto something.
That would have been very cool, man. If Fallout 76 didn't exist and instead these remastered versions existed, oh man, that would be a lot better version of Bethesda right now. Fallout 76 is not, well, it has its downfalls for sure, but it's not made by the central focus BGS Studios, made by the guys down in Texas, which is, they're a younger studio, and their sole focus was on this online game. They're trying to make it online, unending, revenue for them. But I think these remastered editions could have done the trick. It could have been as successful. So.
Yeah. And we talked about it. We talk about this every once in a while too. Whenever Fallout comes up as a subject, like they can't not release any Fallout stuff besides 76 until Fallout 5, right? Like they got to release something between now and then, because we know that Fallout 5, it will be after Elder Scrolls 6, which will be what, like 2035 before we see the next Fallout game. So it's just like, come on, you got to release something between now and then.
Gotta release something. And Obsidian and BGS are together now. They're in the same umbrella. Let's just do it, man. Like, the time is right. Yeah. You got these two games, two legacy RPGs. That's, it is really a symbol more of Xbox. I personally think is more of a symbol for Xbox systems than anything. I would push this as much as you can into the Game Pass. You could do Game Pass or to Xbox first, and then PC, and then put it to other platforms later. That's great too to do as well. Man, I just want these remastered versions to happen.
Yeah.
I hope this year. I'm hoping. Yes.
Yeah. Or at least hoping for something. But yeah, it's tougher with Obsidian, because we know they're working on Avowed, and we know they're working on Outer Worlds too. So they've kind of got their hands full at this moment. Well, speaking of Bethesda Game Studios, Garrett, we're going to transition into actual news, because we're going to kind of, do a quick RPGs news break. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, Ryan, insert fancy graphics later, okay? Please. So we got to talk about Starfield finally getting a release date, Garrett. Again, the second release date, not the first one, the second one. September 6th. It's coming out this fall. It's going to be the big fall game. They have planted their flag ahead of all the other companies who have fall games coming out this year. So it's technically delayed again for a third time, even though really, I mean, to be fair, it's only really been delayed twice. But Garrett, what do you think about Skyrim, or not Skyrim? I'm so used to Skyrim now. Starfield finally having a release date, Garrett, and it being September. Like, what do you think about this?
I'm torn a little bit. I mean, I kind of was hoping it was earlier this year. Just have some, have something over the summer to play through other than Final Fantasy 16. I think it's fine. The way they rolled it out. It's just so hard when you see the Xbox showcase last year and they promise, these games are coming out 12 months later. And it's just not the case. And I think it's just a messaging thing with Xbox, with their games. They gotta be, of course they gotta market their games, but at the same time, you can't be very, verbose or very outward with, a release date if you can't hold it. Mm-hmm. I'm a little split. Delay it if you need to. I would love a very good Bethesda RPG game. A little bit better technically sound, a little bit better performing, rather than just a heaping pump of garbage. That was kind of like Cyberpunk. That was a messy thing. I think they really saw that and it's like, we cannot do that. Mm-hmm. We absolutely cannot do it. And I think they're thinking in their heads, looking at the trailers from last year with the gameplay reveal for Starfield, it's like, oh, people are saying 30 frames per second. We can't just do that. This is the Xbox Series X. We gotta have 60 frames in there, or a performance mode at least. You can have it scaled however you want, but at least a performance mode in the game. And I think that's what they're doing right now. I think the game, is pretty much finished. Of course, they'll go through the bugs or whatever. At this point, it is just polish. And let me tell you, I think that it's like this for every big project, including my projects. The first 95% of the project is pretty doable. Like it'll take some good amount of effort and planning, but it's doable. The last 5%, the last 2% of a project is always the hardest, because that last set is trying to make the end product perfect. And it's so hard to make something so perfect. And I think that's where they're going for that last 5%. So, yeah, I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
September. Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it doesn't get delayed until 2024 at this point, which is always a possibility. First of all, I actually disagree. I actually think that they're prepping us to actually just tell us, it's only 30 frames per second, unless you play on PC and your PC can support running it above 30 frames a second. I'm pretty sure that that's actually what's going to happen here. It'll make us sad, but it's one of those things where I think it'll definitely be playable, at least at that 30 frames per second, especially with that amount of polish. And I think more than anything, I think the game that really maybe changed things for Microsoft in this regard and made them want to maybe make sure this game got all the time it needs more than anything else was actually Halo, and what happened with Halo, where they really rushed out Halo at a time where it shouldn't have come out. Yes, we would have been, upset, and there would have been doom and gloom in the Xbox world if Halo got delayed by another year. But they should have just delayed Halo by another year to make sure it was there, content complete day one, with all the content you'd want from it and whatnot. So I feel like, they could have probably put Starfield out, last year in November when it was supposed to come out. But I feel like the launch of Halo actually had a lot more to do with it that we maybe don't give it credit for. It may be, changing that decision a little bit, because I think maybe, even, Microsoft might have gotten involved, or I think they're just more likely to delay games now until they're ready than they probably were before Halo released, I think that had a little bit to do with it. But so I definitely think but at the same time, I know that if they weren't confident that this game would come out in September, they wouldn't have, announced a release date. So I know some people were out there goofing and saying, this game's not coming out till 2024. But I think at this point, the fact that they were confident enough to give a date shows me that they're going to stick to this unless there's like an emergency and it has to get delayed at this point. I think it's coming out in September as well.
Yeah, well, whatever the state is, I agree with you. It's gonna be September, or you know, delay another month or something because of logistics or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not gonna be next year at this point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Maybe Sony will announce that Spider-Man 2 is coming out the exact same day, and Bethesda will be like, "Well, we probably don't want it to come out the same day, so let's move Starfield out of the way of this."
I mean, I don't know who would be afraid with more, Starfield or Spider-Man. I mean, Spider-Man, of course, is great. Insomniac, great, but Starfield is like one in 10 years. It's gonna be a pretty big moment for a lot of people. I
Yeah,
think.
that's true. I guess it, but also you have to consider how many copies Spider-Man sold, which was like 20 million. So like, I
It's a
don't know.
lot.
That's a
Mhm.
lot of people that are probably looking forward to the sequel as well. So I don't know. That's like an interesting thought experiment, Garrett. If they both came out at the same time, who would be afraid more, Starfield or
I
Spider-Man? Because
I think it's
they'll probably
more
come
just
out
an
within
Apple
months from each
situation.
other. So this is like a
It's true.
realistic question.
I think it could be pretty close. I think Spider-Man 2 is like October. I think it's late October
Okay.
type of area. I think it's their fall game. And probably one more game around there. That's what they did last year. So yeah, I think Spider-Man 2, no matter what Starfield's gonna hit, it's gonna be successful. And I think vice versa too with Starfield. I think Starfield sales, what we're gonna see is gonna be the same thing with Game Pass in general. It's gonna be pretty low hits on the Xbox front, a lot of hits on PC because
Yeah.
there is a very hardcore PC BGS fan base going on with the mod community and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it won't matter too much.
Yeah, that's the type of game that, like, even if it wasn't on Game Pass, it would still sell better on PC anyways, just because of mods and
Yeah,
because of, the people devoted to playing the Bethesda games on PC. Like, it's just rooted just in that
it's a
culture
PC game.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Either way, it's going to be, really big launch when it does come out. And it'll definitely be one of the bigger fall games. I don't know if it'll actually, because that's the thing. I think it'll actually sell less copies than something like Spider-Man, but more so, I think it'll actually sell less copies probably than Hogwarts Legacy does this year. But I still think
yeah,
it'll be one of like the top 10 selling games by the time the year's over, I think. But
yeah.
yeah,
Sounds good.
especially because by that time, cross your fingers, Hogwarts Legacy will actually have the console versions out, the other console versions, which will then, of course, increase its sales. Because we just got the new release date for the Xbox One and PS4 versions of Hogwarts Legacy, because they're coming out in May now. So they ended up getting delayed too. And Switch, they're just like, they're not talking about it at this point. They're just like, who
My
knows?
God,
Who knows when the Switch version of
it's so
Hogwarts Legacy
weird.
comes out?
Like, why don't they just drop it? I guess they had some. Maybe they had some sort of investor obligation at this point with those versions, but man, I think everyone, well, at least in the gaming sphere, we're out of sight, out of mind with those
Yeah.
last year. I'm so curious about the Switch version though. It is not a cloud version, and I'm just so curious how that's gonna play out.
Me too.
Um,
I
especially when it's in-house
I kind of
like
just
that.
want to know what that ends up looking like. And to be fair, to give WB some credit, I mean, they made it work with Mortal Kombat 11. So like
Sure.
because that's a native port of that game as well. So like I think they can do the native ports of Switch games pretty well. So I don't know. I'm hoping that turns. I'm just interested and curious. Not even someone who's interested in that game at all. I'm just curious to know from a logistical standpoint how that actually pans out, which is really
Give me
interesting.
a Digital Foundry
Yeah.
video
Oh my
about
god, I
that
can't
one.
wait for that. It's gonna be great.
Is
Oh man.
interesting.
But speaking of Switch Cat, there's
Mhm.
another game that we thought would never come out that in fact is actually coming out again. Advanced Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, April 21st. So almost a little over a month from now, Garrett, we will be playing Advanced Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp. Where's your hype level at now that this is finally coming out? Because I don't know about you. I'm pretty darn excited that this is actually happening. Finally. We've been waiting for so long and they finally are releasing this gosh darn game.
Dude, I'm really hyped about this game. It looks so good. I I was excited last year when it got announced and almost come out. And I'm still excited now. It's just maybe it's so out of left field that they're just like, "Hey, we're back. Here's Advance Wars. It's gonna come out," and it's just like, we thought we didn't know what was gonna happen with it because we know Nintendo they can silence games and just be away, for a long time, and it would be so weird if only one person from the UK or Ireland or whatever would only experience that game. But now it's coming out. It's coming out on Switch. Well, and let me tell you, I 99% confident that Advance Wars 1 and 2 will never be on GBA Nintendo Switch Online because of this
Yep.
game coming out now. So I think they were like, oh, GBA Nintendo Switch Online's out. All right, time to bring out the Advance Wars because the fans will be whining that Advance Wars is not even out yet. So I think it's a good time to bring it out. So I'm ready for it, man.
Yeah.
By
Now,
April.
I know that they had, if you remember before they announced the Game Boy Advance games were coming to Switch, there was that leak a while ago where they were essentially like the emulator for playtesting the Game Boy Advance games for Switch was out there, and there was a list of games there on that list, and I'm pretty sure the Advance Wars games were games they were testing, because I know a lot of the games on that list actually were included in the first batch of Game Boy games. It's or of the ones that have been announced so far. And there's a couple outliers, like Metroid Zero Mission was another one that they were testing. And of course Advance Wars 1 and 2. So I'm hopeful that they actually end up coming out at some point, but maybe they were testing them. And then, after this whole thing happened, they're like, okay, maybe these never come out at that point, to your point.
Yeah, it's so hard just because this game, this reboot camp, it's a one-to-one, like it's literally a remake and just with updated graphics and cartoons. They would be shooting themselves in the foot if they released Advance Wars 1 and 2 on Nintendo Switch Online. The only, like timing wise, if they would ever do it, it would be a year later or
Yeah.
2 years later at least. To give it some space.
So what you're saying, Garrett, is if I want to play the originals, I got to go on my Wii U before the end of the month and then buy Advance Wars 1 and 2 before the Wii U shop closes and get those.
That I mean, Nintendo does it best to close away those old games and making sure that you never have access to certain. Yes, yes. You'll have to go to your Wii U in order to figure that out, or you could just be a pirate just like me.
Oh my God, I don't like the fact that you're encouraging this. But Garrett, before we move on, I have one last question for you. Even if this sells well, let's say the game miraculously, sells 10 million copies just because. Obviously, it's not going to do that because that's way too many or way too high expectations. But let's say in another universe, if that happened, will they ever make another Advance Wars game again, even if this game sells super well? Like, do they ever take this chance again?
They would be super surprised and totally double down on a new Advance Wars. I think so if it had enough sales. I think this reboot camp is good testing waters to figure out how much there is to gauge with this series. And who's the studio that's actually making this?
It's Way Forward, the same company that does Shantae.
That's correct. That is correct. I could totally see them just like, hey, Advance Wars reboot camp was great. Why don't you make a third one and make it cool and have a new campaign and everything? I'm sure it would be low cost and high returns at that point. I think what Nintendo's doing is kind of organically grow an outsourced studio to work with them on this franchise, which I think is smart. Compared, same thing with was it Mercury Steam?
Yeah, Mercury Steam. Yeah, who worked on Dread.
Yeah, work on Dread. A really great 2D Metroid game that's gonna make another great 2D Metroid game. I think they just want one of those type of collaborations. Going forward. So yeah, I can totally see it.
The reason I asked this question is because I actually agreed with you that was the original plan. because when they first announced this, like they were that was absolutely what they were trying to set up in the same way that they did with Dread, where I'm actually now confident we will see another 2D Metroid game, from Mercury Steam at some point. But I think even if this sold 10 million copies as an example, they will never do this again because of what happened here as far as, having to delay the game because of the war, right? I think they just want out of the war games, like games based off, modern warfare. I think they just want out of that market just in general, because I don't think they want to deal with another delay, like having to shelve a game for a year after, printing all those copies. And
That's
stuff.
crazy.
I just don't think they ever want to go through that again. So I think they may actually just decide that this is the last Advance Wars game we get, regardless of how well this performs. But
well, get your copies.
Yeah.
Get your physical copies. It'll be one of those,
It's gonna be like,
I think this one's gonna be a gem. I think this is gonna be a physical gem collector. So get invested, buy a copy, keep it sealed, keep it for 10 years, see how it is 10 years later. I think
it's just like 3D All Stars, Garrett. That panned out well for everybody, right? Financially.
Oh my God.
But actually, the better comparison would actually be Metroid Prime Remastered as far as how this will actually pan out physically. Because, even now people are trying to buy that game and they can't. So there you go. Last thing we wanted to touch on before I get to Nagachaka's question, which again throws in another topic in here. Garrett, we also got this Dragon Age Dreadwood gameplay that I did not look at all because I don't want to know anything about this game until they formally announce it. So I want to know what you have to say about this one, since I stayed out of this one.
Okay, so I'll keep it to a minimum. I've seen snippets, I've seen GIFs of this gameplay, and only read about it, not seen video, because I think the video has been taken down. There's only mirror links, and I don't want to go into the dark web. Right. I don't want to get viruses on my computer. So the consensus on this rumor is that they've looked at gameplay, and it kind of is largely inspired by more action gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
People say it's been compared to God of War. Ragnarok is the first one, and Ragnarok being huge inspirations of this game. And so we're going to probably see a very different, more, action-based Dragon Age game than we've ever seen before. And I think, it's not entirely surprising, given, how the state of RPG games are going, at least for Western role-playing games are going. It's more action-based and more focused like that. So, just I know a lot of Dragon Age fans are kind of skeptical about this rumored gameplay leak. And I'll just keep it right there. I don't want to, spoil too much for you. There's a lot more in terms of classes and spells and whatever, but keeping it at a minimum, that's more of the controversy than anything in this discussion.
Which makes sense, because actually they tried that with Dragon Age 2. Like, that was what they were going for, where they wanted to make Dragon Age 2 feel like more like Mass Effect when you play it, where it was very action focused. Like, you could still assign, things to your teammates and play as your other party members, but it was very much like super action RPG style versus what they did with Inquisition or what they did with, the original Dragon Age Origins. So I could definitely understand why people might be, hesitant toward that. But yeah, like, I'm going to kind of withhold judgment until we actually see that, because I think we'll talk about that more, when that officially is out there. But, of course, wanted to, throw that in the rumor category, since it is in fact a rumor, Garrett. But enough about all that, Garrett. It is time to, of course, let some of our friends into the party with us. It is time to party up. And this one relates to tonight's topic. This comes to us from Nagachaka, who asks us this question: which RPG rumor needs to become a reality, no matter how unlikely it is to ever happen? And why is it the rumor about a proper sequel for Super Mario RPG coming to Nintendo Switch? Am I the only one who's heard about this rumor, or am I the one who's actually starting this rumor? Who knows? So that's what we got from Nagachaka. Now, obviously, Super Mario RPG, that'd be great. That's probably never going to happen. I'm actually kind of surprised Nagachaka said this instead of something else. But Garrett, actually, I'll let you have time to marinate on this for a second, because this is where we get into fun territory where we kind of just make up rumors
Yes.
at this point, Garrett,
Yes, we do.
or just
I
give
love
our
it.
RPG wish list as to like what we want. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot this week, when I told you I was playing the Resident Evil games again, of course, Garrett, and
Mhm.
Ryan Turford's personality pretty well from doing this podcast with you for a while. I told you that, and you already probably know what I'm going to say. So,
I kind of do.
I think like Square Enix, they're over there talking to Capcom. They work out some kind of deal to license the RE engine, aka the Resident Evil engine that powers those games, because they want to make a new Parasite Eve remake, Garrett. Parasite Eve remake in the RE engine. So it looks like the Resident Evil games, because it's already a survival horror game. All you need now is to add the RE engine to it. And then, you set it in New York during Christmas time. So it's a Christmas game, but also a survival horror game, but also an RPG. Like, what more is there to love right there? Come on. That's one rumor that I would love to see more than anything. And it's not, of course, it's not a rumor that actually exists, but that's what I want more than anything. Also, I just, I want Gung Ho Games to finally wake up one day and be like, you know what? These Lunar games on Ryan's shelf, we want to put those on modern consoles, so Ryan doesn't have to keep pulling out his Sega CD all the time. Because we did it with the Grandia games, and people like those remasters. So why don't we do it with these games too? So that's kind of my response to Nagachaka, and kind of my of course very Ryan Turford wish list. Also, Sega, get out there and get a collection of the Shining Force 3 games. I beg you to actually translate those so we can one day officially play those. But Garrett, what about you? What do you think about Nagachaka's question?
So Nagachaka, I'm sorry. First off, the Super Mario RPG is like, I'm sorry, folks. Like,
look, he said it is no matter how unlikely to happen. What do you want to see? So of course, he's in dreaming territory. That's this whole exercise.
He's definitely in dreaming territory. I can't argue with that. Knights of the Old Republic. I'm seeing you, and I really, I've been playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I like that game because of the Star Wars, and that's kind of, and the combat's fine. It's okay. I think that's kind of where I stop with that game. The story's fine. The mechanics are very, I mean, it's trying to be more Dark Souls, more open. I know a lot of people love it, but it's just like I need more. I need more of an RPG game, like with Star Wars. I need something like KOTOR remake to like really knock it out of the park. And I know it's not really a rumor; it's more of a wish. It's just like it's been very muddy with that development.
Well, I was just gonna say it's more of a rumor at this point, or more of a hope that it even comes out at this point. Because I mean, Aspire sounds like they're not developing that game anymore, and who knows if that game ever comes out at this point.
That was probably the smartest decision they ever made. Actually, to pull it out of Aspire. No, not to be rude to those guys, but they've only ported Star Wars games. They don't know how to. I mean,
well, they've done more than just Star Wars games. Just as a quick correction, because they've done a bunch of other ports of other games, but they were mostly like their whole history is they started as a porting house for Mac specific versions of video games. So they would port games from Windows to Mac, and they would basically do freelance work, doing a lot of that stuff. And then eventually, when the Switch was coming out, they got tasked to bring games over from Lucasfilm to Switch with a lot of the Star Wars games. But that's kind of they've always been a porting house, to your point, Garrett, to kind of bring things back on track. So it's not like they've never really developed their own game. So
exactly, they haven't really developed their own game, and to give them Star Wars KOTOR remake as their first game, that's kind of crazy. Like, it's like kind of it's a dream project, and I'm sure they were very excited for it and very ambitious about it. But it was good that they yanked it out pretty quickly after seeing probably some development update or whatever. It's like, oh, this is not the right fitting studio for this massive project. This kind of game it's gonna have high expectations, very high expectations. So we'll see how it goes. It's going over to Saber Interactive, which I'm not
Well, they're
too
not the
much
developers.
right.
They're the publishers of it. So they
Really?
are they haven't announced who's actually developing it. Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, they said being moved to Saber Interactive. So
Yeah, it's
we'll
like it's
see.
under Saber Interactive's leadership, but Saber Interactive isn't
I
developing it.
see.
Yeah.
Embrace the group's so weird.
Yeah. No, they're kind of all over the place because Saber has like one tendril of studios, and then Deep Silver has another tendril of studios, and then THQ Nordic is a different one. It's a giant map.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. So I just hope KOTOR remake is actually, going along, developing fine under a good studio. We just don't know yet at all. I hope it resurfaces back around E3 time. At
Yeah.
least just like not a gameplay or anything like that, but just some kind of like, hey, it's back in
We
development.
acknowledge this game actually exists again. We will.
This game's coming back. Yeah, I don't know who's the right studio, to be perfectly honest with you, because I don't think it's BioWare at this point. I think they're a different studio now. They're focused on Dragon Age, so
Yeah.
let them be.
Well, they also are working. It's still working on adding updates to the Old Republic, Garrett. So it's just like
Interesting, yeah.
like BioWare is actually still working on that game still. In fact, I almost think it would be fitting because of the work that BioWare Austin, I think it's BioWare Austin, that does the Old Republic.
Mm.
I would actually think it'd be fitting that BioWare Austin actually does the Knights of the Old Republic remake instead. Like
That'd be cool.
maybe they stop, maybe whenever the content plan for the Old Republic finally winds down, maybe they work on that, because that's really interesting.
That'd be cool.
Because I know some friends that actually just picked back KOTOR, the Old Republic back up, and I've been hearing them talk about all the new features and stuff like that, and I'm like, I still can't believe they're still providing updates for that game. So I think that'd
pretty
be
old game,
like an
too.
interesting play right there if they, rope them in. But yeah, who knows? Who even knows who's developing this? Or I'm also just so curious to know what they saw to make them want to pull this game out, because like I just want to know what kind of game
It's so
Aspire
early.
actually was putting together here.
Yeah, I was curious about that too. So not to the Old Republic, we'll see where you are, out there. I think the other thing that I just want to just put out there is just get a Fallout like game, a side game by a different Xbox studio. I don't care which. I mean, no, I do care which studios, and I have a short list in my head.
Compulsion Games, makers of We Happy Few, working on Fallout.
No, please don't. Compulsion, do your own thing. I heard their project's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till they announce their own projects. But man, oh man, another Fallout game. It just would be heavenly. Just more Fallout. It can be in the Fallout 4 engine. I don't care. Just give me more Fallout. That'd be great. In a different city, like Fallout London.
Yeah.
That mod, focused community game that's eventually coming out and has been putting out great trailers for it. So yeah, just give me more Fallout. That'd be great.
Yeah. I knew you were kind of going to see that after everything we
We
talked about
circle
earlier.
around.
We just
Yeah.
came full circle, Garrett. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. I think we ran through all this stuff perfectly. So Garrett, where can people find you on the internet, my friend?
You can follow me at Twitter at Bland Explosion, and you can also see me on the Discord at Dr. Bland Explosion or Bland Explosion or whatever. Very active on the RPG Cave Discord channel and play some video games, podcast network. And you can follow me over at the Garret Bland Retro Backlog Adventures, directed by Ryan Turford. There you go.
We're gonna get all these other. I can't wait for Garrett to see the other games I have planned for him. Oh my god, this is gonna be
I'm
great.
scared.
There's gonna be. I will tell you, Garrett. There will be at least one game that is bad that I have to purposely throw in there, but we'll see. We just have to. We just have to. Okay. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. Yes, I didn't do the long Sean Capri thing. You can also find us on Twitter at Sean Capri, on YouTube at youtube.com/carpool gaming, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 86th level of the RPG Cave. Only 13 more levels until level 99, and we're out.
Bye-bye.